Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Authors on the Air. I'm your host, James Latwell. And with us today, we got Sarah Strohmeyer and Sarah's new book, A Mother Always Knows. I love that cover, by the way.
It's
Uh,
absolutely wonderful.
isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that in a little bit, but um, yeah, it's top flight psychological suspense. And you haven't always written that. So um, this is something, I really dig it. It was a fun read. I mean, if you haven't known Sarah, she's an award-winning, best-selling author. She's written, I think we talked 20. This is like your 20th novel out there in the
Depending on
world.
how you define novel, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, uh, this comes out July 1st, and I think people are really gonna enjoy it. So, why don't you tell folks a little bit about the story behind A Mother Always Knows?
Well, A Mother Always Knows is set in a Vermont dowsing cult. And for those who don't know what dowsing is, it's a very popular activity, ancient practice in Vermont to find water using a twig or a pendulum or dowsing rods. It can also be used for spiritual divination to tap into the universal energy that connects us all. And the book opens with our poor character, Stella, witnessing
Yep.
her mother's brutal murder as they are trying to flee the cult in the woods at night. And Stella is only 10 years old. Fast forward 20 years, and Stella, who's been living a quiet life as a librarian, is outed on social media, and she realizes that her mother's killer now knows who she is, where she is, and is out to get her. And so Stella must find the murderer before the murderer finds her. And in so doing, returns to the cult, which is where the fun is. And there are a lot of flashbacks into the cult and what they did and how they practiced and all the weird stuff that went on.
Yeah, it's a fun story, and the cover. I mean, I don't know if you can do it justice here, but that's kind of the last vision that Stella had when her mother was murdered,
That's
right in
right.
front of her. So it's very
Cernunnos.
very
Cernunnos is the god is her mother is murdered on the summer solstice, which we just celebrated. Cernunnos dies on the summer solstice, is born in the winter solstice. And so he's a mythological creature who's very important to the pagan world.
yeah, very good. Now Stella is such a fascinating character. I mean, she's a millennial, and she's obviously very smart, very driven, but she just thought she got away from her past, but it just has a way of coming back to find her. How did you kind of come up with that story idea to have the past come up and tap Stella on the shoulder like that?
Well, that's a really good question. I happen to know somebody who was raised in a Vermont cult.
Mm,
Their name shall remain anonymous, but they're still around. And I think it's really, I mean, there were some fun parts about being in the cult, according to him. There were a lot of kids. It was, a free for all. You didn't
mhm.
have to go to school. You didn't have to go to bed at any particular time. But the cult never really leaves you. And in Stella's case, and in the case of all the people who have lost family members to cults, and there are hundreds of cults in the United States, so this kind of affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
These people who love people who have joined cults live with the ramifications and the repercussions. And so that was my initial focus was what would you do if your loving mother joined a cult, dragged you along, and then you pay the ultimate price as a child. And that was the motivation for everything that Stella does and my motivation for writing it. And I felt really sorry for her.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a way of creating a character like Stella who you want to root for. I mean, she's had so much happen in her past, and you want to see her succeed and everything, and you're just kind of worried about her as the story goes on. So, really great job in developing that character and having readers want to get on her journey with her.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Now, yeah, you talked about the diviners, the cults. Cult in fiction seems to be having a little groundswell right now. I've
It
noticed several
does.
cult novels coming out, and they're all different. But
Yeah.
what is it about cults and that culture that just is so attractive to readers, and why do people want to kind of peek behind the curtain?
That's another good question. I think I can't speak to other authors, but I can speak from my experience. I've had experience with cults, and I've had experience with cults as a newspaper reporter, and I've had
Mm.
experience with cults living in Vermont. There are quite a few cults living in Vermont. Um, and each one is slightly different, yet they're all the same. You're going to have the same principles of a charismatic leader, dietary restrictions, great sacrifices requested upon the followers. And why people want to join these, I don't know. The first cult I ever covered was in Kirtland, Ohio in 1989. And that
Mm.
was, I was called out one night. I was about to leave on a Friday night, and my editor said, "Go up to Kirtland. There's something about some family being buried in a in a in a garage." And I got up there to find that Jeffrey Lundgren, who is a cult leader, a small-time cult leader, had killed a family after inviting them over for spaghetti dinner for divine inspiration.
Mm.
And I think what we all want to do, I think what we're trying to figure out when we get into cults is it's like peeking in the windows of houses or peeking into families. Every cult is different. What makes people leave everything behind to join what to me seems like hell? But for those people who fall into cults is security, confirmation, promises of eternal life, validation. It's fascinating. And they're so bizarre. I was thinking about Jonestown, which was just so sad.
Mhm.
276 children died in Jonestown. It was the worst mass casualty event before 9/11 to hit the US.
Yeah.
It was a horrible, horrible thing. But then there are weird cults like, the House of David that was started in 1902 that recruited members by baseball, bearded baseball, almost recruited Babe Ruth. We have the 12 tribes here in Vermont, where I drew heavily of my inspiration.
Mm.
They have the yellow delis here, which are positioned near places you get often on the Long Trail or the Appalachian Trail. They recruited members by following the Grateful Dead. I mean, humans are just insane.
They are, but I thought it was a nice peek into that culture and the power dynamic that goes on with these cult like leaders
Right.
and that kind of thing, and what Stella has to deal with when she returns there to try to find out the truth about what happened.
Right.
Now, in A Mother Always Knows, Stella, she's always searching for that. Now that she knows that someone is responsible for her mom's murder, she's trying to find out who's behind that.
Yep.
And what another nice thread in the book is that supernatural kind of power or a gift that Stella and some of the others have, and her mom. How did you come across that element and blend that supernatural kind of influence into the book?
Years ago, I read a column, I think it was in Mother Jones of all things, about death dowsers who are used in the South to find buried bodies, basically.
Wow.
And the controversy in the article I read, or maybe it was some other legal journal, was that they were called to the witness stand and they would actually testify during trials as to how they found a body. Dogs can find bodies, hikers find bodies, joggers find bodies. So I don't really understand the controversy, but the idea was that they could feel death coming through their bare feet.
Mm-hmm.
Vermont happens to be the dowsing capital of the world. The American Society of Dowsers, which is going through a little bit of a schism, based up in Danbury, Vermont. And that it's a really fun place to visit because it's this little New England home. You walk in, the lobby or this gift shop is very kind of spiritual. But then when you go in the back, they have tapes and tapes and tapes and photos of all the original dowsers. And it looks like the Danbury Chamber of Commerce. They're very staid, they're wearing suits. And I honestly don't know what they talked about. The dowsers, almost everybody I know who has dug a well around here has used a dowser. They're usually old farmers who come in, they'll rip a twig off and go around the property and will bend down to the point where the bark rips off their hands. And they'll say, "Yep, dig here. And I once asked a well guy who was digging a well at our house, so what do you think about that? He said, I'm pretty sure you just go anywhere in Vermont, dig down far enough, you're going to find water. I mean, that's his cynical, but other people just swear by it. And it has this whole following. You make dowsing charts. You can start asking questions. So I've done a lot of dowsing. I'm horrible at it. My late mother-in-law, who was of Welsh descent and had one green eye and one blue eye, she was a little bit of a witch. I gave her a pair of dowsing rods and she could just walk through the yard and find our water lines and all the energy. I mean, it worked for her. It doesn't work for me. I've tried, but maybe I haven't saged my pendulum enough. I don't know. So it's a really fascinating field. You can get lost in it. You know, it's very technical, it's very complicated, and there are ley lines and, you know, all the standing stones and all sorts of stuff. It's Vermont.
Yeah. I mean, out in California, you know, we see a little bit of that, you know, but it's very rare and it's not as prevalent as apparently you have in Vermont. I didn't know that was like the center of the universe for
dowsing. Well, you guys need more water out there. You know,
we do need water. We do need water.
Maybe that's your problem.
That could be.
But you can also use dowsing to clear negative energy out of your house. You can, this house where I am right now, I don't know if you can, we have a ghost in this house. Maybe she'll make an appearance. I've asked her to leave through dowsing, but again, I have no skills in this area. So I need to invite somebody with more talent to come in and get her out. I'm sorry, Regina. Sorry. Don't want to piss her off.
Yeah. So that could be a whole other podcast.
I'll have a tough night ahead of me. Yeah.
Yeah, she's going to be after you now. Now, in the book, Stella, you know, she thinks she's found a little safe place in her life. She's, you know, working in a safe place in kind of like a library setting. But the past and those secrets just don't go away. What is it about secrets that are so powerful, and you see them come up a lot in psychological suspense? What is it about secrets?
Well, I guess my question would be, does anyone not have a secret? I mean, by the time you get to a certain age, you're going to have secrets. You know, you just are. And if we all told everybody the truth right away, we wouldn't have soap operas, or what was the great era of soap operas. Being secrets are something that we always think we can keep, and we never can, especially in this day and age. You know, it's really scary in a lot of ways to, no matter how you try to stay off social media or how you try to keep yourself private, eventually somebody will find you. And the people are going to find you are going to be millennials and Gen Z. They're going to find you like that.
Yep.
And it was something that I'm a parent of a 34-year-old and a 30-year-old. So yeah, the 30-year-old doesn't care, but the 34-year-old can find anything on anybody at any time. If there's any type of murder or any type of secret, she's there. She's got it. She's also a reporter. So it's hard to keep secrets in this day and age. It's hard to stay under the radar.
It is. It really is. Now, you've got a really fascinating background. I mean, you were a former journalist, I think, with the Boston Globe and others. How does that help you as a psychological suspense author?
Well, before true crime became the national pastime, I covered crime. So when I was working for the Cleveland Plain Deal, I worked in great places for crime. I worked at Long Island Newsday. You know, that was when I was there in the, brace yourself, in the mid 1980s. That was during the Satanic Panic. I mean, that was the story that kept on giving. I worked in New Jersey, where, you know, just turn a corner and you'd find a dead body. That was that was fun. And then actually Ohio, for one summer, I was on what they call the sex and death beat, because it just seemed like there was someone found on a hike and bike trail. A woman found out at Best Buy. A girl dropped off after a concert, never made it home. And then I had the cult that I found, the Jeffrey Lundgren cult in 1989 that I covered, where I never before knew that there was any type of cult like that in the world. And here it was, just a brutal slaughter of a family. And that pretty much hit home. And so it's all of that has kind of fueled my true crime feeling. The problem The problem of being a journalist is that back in my day, we were taught to write in pyramid style, most salient facts first. And
Mhm.
that's not the way it is anymore. You want to get people down to the bottom of the story. So as a mystery author and as a thriller, I needed to learn to reverse that, to draw people in as opposed to just hit them over the head with the facts right off the bat. I've been blessed to have that journalism career. And I think my daughter was lucky to have a journalism career as well, because I'm not sure, how much journalism is left in this world. So it's nice
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah. Now, you and I were talking just before we went on the air about a fun fact that you have one of the most shoplift books ever,
Yes.
to your credit.
Thank
Tell
you.
us about that one.
So the book was called Barbie Unbound. It was called Barbie Unbound, a parody of the Barbie obsession. And it was written during a time when I probably had undiagnosed, postpartum depression. I'd just given birth to our second child. My husband was working in the Attorney General's office and studying for the bar exam. And I was alone in the woods with these Vermont mothers who would say, no Barbies, put your daughter's Barbies away. And something snapped inside of me, and I decided to take Barbie and put her into 40 historical and current scenarios, so to speak, almost written like
Mhm.
a lab book. We had Barbie of Arc, who had, we dressed her up and put her on a little funeral pyre. We had Barbie Plath with her head in the oven. I'm so sorry about that. We had, welfare queen Barbie. I mean, it was just really tasteful. And I had the Jeff Hansen, who was a photographer at my paper in Lebanon, New Hampshire. He'd shot everything. It was so much fun. We set up all these little sets, and it was great. And we thought for sure it would sell, but no major publisher wanted to touch it. So we ended up selling it to a lesbian feminist press called New Victoria. I think there's out of business now in Norwich, Vermont. They published it. They were like, what the heck, come get us, Mattel. And Mattel did threaten to sue, but they never did. And it became this weird hit. And, it was on CBS This Morning and all these shows. And then I found out that it was the most shoplifted book in America. People just kept shoving in their coats. And so I never made a dime off that book because everyone kept stealing it.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. So we're gonna finish up with something we call 3 quick hits, and I want to put you in Stella's headspace, and just
Okay.
3 quick questions.
All right.
What's Stella's favorite drink? What does she like to drink?
What does Stella like to drink? Stella is a respectable librarian. I'm going to say she's going to drink iced tea, lemon, no sugar.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
How about Stella's music? What does she listen to?
I think she's part of that whole generation of, maybe she listened to Lizzo before Lizzo got canceled. Alicia Keys. God, I got to think. Maybe just classical.
Yeah, I could see that, and I could see the Alicia Keys kind of connection there too. I can see her doing that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like the the Luminaries. What is the name of that band? It's going to drive me nuts. We're just paying it.
The Lumineers or something like that.
Lumineers, yeah, that would probably be her style.
Yeah, and then finally, what do you think Stella's greatest fear is?
Stella's greatest fear is being caught and vulnerable and being exposed and having nowhere to run and meeting the killer, her mother's killer, once and for all, who's there to finish the job. That would be Stella's greatest fear. Yep,
that's true. And I think that kind of sums up A Mother Always Knows. You're going to want to go out and see and get this one. It's a fun read. I mean, we talked about it here, and it sounds dark, but it's really not as dark as it. There's just a good story, great characters, and I think people are going to love it. So congrats on that, Sarah.
Humor in almost all my books. I can't help it. I wish I didn't. I'd probably sell more copies, but it's just the way it is.
It's the way it is, and it's the way it should be. This was a fun read. So, Sarah, thanks for spending some time with us.
Oh, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Good. I'm glad it was. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, thanks.